Welcome back to the Rebellion, ladies and gents. My name is Shane Hazel. Along with me, the one and only Banks Wise. How are you, sir?
Pretty good, British Shane Hazel. Thank you for that intro there.
It's my pleasure, mate.
So Shane and I were talking about how to start this episode, and we had that little idea of the God Save the Queen music and then stopping it because, well, hold on, this is good and all, but we don't want to like praise the Queen either. And then we realized that the lyrics to God Save the Queen are quite interesting. We're going to jump into that right after we finish with 5 different reviews. You guys have like come up and scored for us, so thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you. I know we ask on every episode, basically. Maybe there might be that one that we get through at the end where we don't ask, but thank you guys for sticking through to the end, listening to those, and then responding, man. This is what we need. I tell you what, if we can have how many? 5?
We have 5,
6?
so we have 3 new ones on iTunes and 2 new ones on Facebook. That brings our total of reviews to like over 150 if you put them together. Plus there's ones on Stitcher and so forth that I haven't even looked at. We probably have some on there too.
Yeah.
But here's one of the first ones on iTunes. It is from Libertarian David.
Thank you, Libertarian David.
We probably saw him at
5 stars
at the LP convention. He said, "So glad I found this podcast a couple of months ago. Banks and Shane have quickly become a must-listen for me. Keep up the great work, gentlemen."
Oh, man, warms my heart. Thank you so much, David, or Libertarian David. It's see, I just skipped the whole party thing. Whatever, Mr. Liberty David.
It's a capital L, but it's at the beginning of a sentence, so it might have been just by default capital.
Yeah.
See, we don't know.
I must listen though. Golly, that's up there, man. That's a high ranking. That's above. These guys are really good. This is a must listen now.
What are the podcasts you think about when you're like Liberty podcasts? Like
Liberty podcasts? Man, I'll tell you what. I mean, I've made no qualms about it in the past. Mr. Dave Smith and Robbie the Fire. I truly enjoy those guys. I wish they did a little more on YouTube and stuff. Mm-hmm. I'd like more content out of them, but hey, for what you get for free and maybe a quick sponsorship, it's a pretty good deal.
Do you watch on YouTube sometimes?
I do. Yeah, so I love YouTube, and I really enjoy seeing personalities, right? Because you get so much more from just the intricacies and nuance of people's like facial expressions, and and as I'm doing post-production on this show, like even just to watch you, because a lot of times what I'm looking for is a good clip or like a good like a screen grab for the YouTube videos, right?
Thumbnails. You're very good at choosing the thumbnails.
So
it's usually one of us is like backwards laughing.
Yeah, and you're looking for those moments where you're explaining to somebody, you're pointing, you're like, whatever that expression is, that nuance that does come through, obviously, with visual, right? It's
I'm giving to you right now, Shane.
In every show, I'm just going to have Banks do these crazy...
No, you know what's funny is there's this guy I follow on YouTube called Linus Tech Tips. Well, that's the name of his channel. And he does these thumbnails, and he's done a few episodes explaining how they make YouTube videos. Mm-hmm. At the end of the YouTube video, the cameraman just says, "Okay, now make weird faces." And like for a minute, he just goes and makes weird faces, and they take one of those as the thumbnail.
I love it. Maybe we're going to start that. So as these start to play out, we used to just talk. Now we're going to be doing our... See, we won't even have to get that far. And that's the thing, is we've never had to do it in the past. I just look for somewhere where Banks is mostly smiling or he's got expressive hand gestures and we're good. But cool. There's another one from, let's see, Matty Cakes 78. I don't know if I know Matty Cakes 78. It says 5 stars, great interviews, conversations, and thoughts. Listen to this one.
Thank you, Matty Cakes. That's really cool. We've got our buddy Jay Wise 08. I think Shane and I both know who that is. Yeah. Thank you, Jay. He says, Banks and Shane offer great insight and content to those of us who are tired of the puppets on TV. They want to see more liberty in the land that used to be the beacon of liberty in the days gone by. If you read this review and haven't given an episode a listen, I just recommend you take some time to listen. You will not regret it.
I love it. Thanks, Jay Wise. I appreciate it, man. Jay has been with us, I think, even through the campaign, man. I mean, so yeah. He's been around for a long time, and for him to leave a great one, no brainer. Yeah.
And contrary to what 1 + 1 would equal, he and I are not related at all.
I didn't even think of it that way because I guess I've known you guys both for so long. You got a couple on Facebook over there too, huh?
I do. One is from our friend Martin Cohen, who we've got some cool projects planned with him. We'll tell you about that someday. He says, Shane is a great libertarian voice with a beautiful voice.
I read that earlier.
Or is a great libertarian with a beautiful voice. I messed that one up.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I can't. Someday I'll.
And that is part of the project that we're going to do with him is because of Shane's beautiful voice.
Well, God gave me something, man. A beautiful bald head and a deep voice that used to scare my I guess middle school girlfriend's fathers to death. Oh man.
Because you would call on the phone and be like, "Hey, is Julie there? Who is this man asking for my daughter?"
Imagine this: ring, 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 ring. You're a father. You pick up the phone, and some guy on the other end who sounds a lot like this at 12. At 12, says, "Hi, can I speak to Caroline, please?" Dude, I'll tell you right now, Mister. I'm not going to give out his last name, but Chuck. Chuck is now my insurance guy. Insurance guy.
Sure.
Yeah. At any rate, Chuck was like, "Who the hell is this calling my 12-year-old daughter?" You sound like a damn man.
That's really funny.
I was like, I'm 12, man. So at any rate, we're still really good friends to this day, and he always tells that story. But yeah, no, thank God I was given this little voice to have some fun with.
That's funny. And the last one is from Tim, and he says, "Excellent focus and timely information."
Yeah.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you so much, guys. We really, really appreciate all these, and keep them coming. I mean, if you're out there and you've listened to more 4 or 5 shows, and you got just a second, man, 5 stars. You don't even have to write a review sometimes, but that 5 star, it adds to the whole algorithm thing and puts us way up. So at the beginning of the episode, if you don't listen all the way through, yeah, maybe stop, take a second. Or while you're listening, go in and leave that review now, and we'll read it here on the air. We really appreciate it, guys.
Absolutely. So this God Save the Queen thing, do you know why I thought about it?
You might be wondering why we're doing a British show today.
I guess some people might not know.
Hey, yeah, the Brexit happened. It was
11 p.m. last night.
Yeah, the 31st of January. The final bell tolled for the UK's involvement in Brexit.
You know what's interesting?
Did you hear that?
I hear that. They seem happy.
There are tens and tens of thousands of people out in Parliament Square, all across London, all across Europe, or all across the UK, man.
I'm sure there's some people in Europe who are celebrating too.
Oh,
or the
yeah,
rest of Europe.
Oh, sure, they might be. Yeah, they might be good. Finally, they've proven it can be done, right? And this is a giant deal in terms of what's going on in the world right now. And we had to talk about it. I think you texted me yesterday and like, "Hey man, what are we going for the show today?" And I was like, "Got to do Brexit, right?"
Yeah, you texted that back. I was like, "Got it." Of course you have to do that. You know what's interesting is the 11 p.m. time frame. I don't know this, but it's like, why 11 p.m. and not midnight? Because usually when you go to the next day, it's midnight.
Yeah.
And I think it's because Brussels is an hour
ahead.
So it's funny that the Brexit is happening per Brussels timeline instead of UK timeline.
Oh, it's so weird.
But it actually is part of a bigger fact that not a lot of people are talking about. And we can go to the details later. Is this is Brexit, but it's happening over a new timeline. Like they're out of the EU. They can't vote in the EU.
It's
anymore.
officially over.
But no, it's not officially over.
Well, I mean, it's officially over in terms of the UK taking votes in the EU Parliament.
But all the current laws in the EU apply to the UK until the end of the year in this what they're calling the
I hadn't read that.
In this transition period, and they've got these different dates about when the EU is going to start. Like putting together a trade deal with the UK, and they've got this timeline that I believe is November something of when they're going to try to finalize that. And they even have a timeline, which is funny, for being able to prolong the transition period, which I say funny because this whole Brexit was prolonged by years.
3 years. Which I mean, and let's, I mean, for the sake of being objective. When this initially happened, when they took this referendum over there,
June 2016,
right? They took this vote for democracy, and most of the people said, "Hey, we don't want to do this." And they kept telling them, "No, you don't know how bad it'll be, how terrible it'll be, how we're just going to sink into the depths of the sea out here, and be completely marooned and cut off from the rest of the world, especially the EU, and everybody's going to lose their jobs and they're going to get the plague and starve to death and their kids are going to die. And like that was really what, the parliament and it seemed the globalists, I hate to generalize, but like the globalist people who are always looking to propagandize events for centralized control over people.
It's funny because the globalist is actually a much more appropriate word than usual, because when it would happen, every time there'd be a new conversation about it, like, oh, here's this deadline that apparently doesn't mean anything because most of those deadlines didn't mean much. The globalists everywhere, the globalists in Europe, the globalists in Australia, the globalists in America would come up and be like, oh, whoa, this is just going to affect the whole world. And there's going to be a tragedy and people are not going to have medicine.
They do this all the time. The playbook is run out, don't you think? I mean, the predictability in the way these people react, it's all the talking heads and it's all these people who are part of the ruling class elite out there. It's always death, destruction. You're not going to be able to survive without a centralized government.
It's that partial truth thing. Like it'd be stupid to try to fight back against liberty with no truth. Because
sure, you can't do it.
So that was the partial truth, and the partial truth is, yeah, we should be concerned about possibilities of death and destruction. That's how we stay alive.
It's part of the human psyche.
So what do you think are the main factors or some interesting factors of why it didn't work? Because they did it over and over and over. They had a second referendum. They had another general election, and another general election. They had one PM and another PM.
Boy, I think it boils down to the understanding that a lot of what was happening out there. And I don't want to boil it down to one thing. I think one of the driving factors in all of this is a guy by the name of Nigel Farage. I think the guy is a very eloquent communicator. I think he can just work a crowd, man. He is gifted, and he had a passion. I can't help but think, he's been at it for almost 30 years. I think it was 27 years, as he says in the speech, which we're going to listen to.
It's a fantastic speech.
It is a fantastic speech. But he's given his life to making this movement happen. And, I don't know the guy. I have no idea, what his heart is, but you can see the passion in this man in terms of not being part of a European Union. For sure. And he's flippant about it. I love the fact that he's just like kind of willy-nilly. He says what he means and he does what he wants. And he is not, I don't think he is controlled.
He seems very consistent. And even in the ways his thoughts have changed.
Yeah.
And being honest about that is pretty rare for politicians. They like to just,
I was right.
be it implied that they have never changed, that they've always been righteous.
Sure.
Even when there's like video of them saying the contrary. I'm thinking of Biden for some reason. It pops in my head. But he's pretty honest about the fact that like he never liked the idea, but he was not as fervently against it back in the day when he started this. He was like, whoa, let's see what this experiment is, this common market thing, like cool. But I don't like losing sovereignty. And now he's like, yeah, I thought that then. Now I just hate the whole thing, and I'm going to make sure that it fails because it has gone against every single positive that it ever represented.
So he was a well-off businessman. He closed his business. And,
what kind of business?
I don't know.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but I mean, to take a business, and think about it. Think about growing a business. Like the amount of work that we put into this, I just say what you guys see about 3 hours a week, that is just the surface. There are hours on the back end whether it's editing out cuss words or,
just talking about the plans,
talking about plans.
Shane and I making sure we have rest and rebellion sometimes because we get frustrated.
Yeah.
Not being able just to hang out.
Learning skills, learning how to communicate with your partner in terms of growing a business, the stick-to-itness of it. And I was thinking about this the other day. I was kind of excited when you were like, I don't know if I'm coming up this weekend because we've already got a couple of shows already done for next week, but we've got a pretty busy season coming up. Definitely a busy February where I'm going to be all over the globe. And I believe Banks is, ratcheting up here into high gear as well. And then I was kind of thinking like, man, Banks and I don't take days off. I mean, when you talk about, oh man, I can't wait for the weekend, I'm chomping at the bit to come in here and do this kind of stuff. But I'll tell you right now, like it's one of those things where you look at the past couple of years now, and even into the campaign for sure, we have tirelessly toiled and given our lives and our money and even our property, if you want to put it into those terms, to build a business, to build something that can sustain us while we fight for liberty. And that's a difficult thing to do. For this guy to give up his job and to go out there and pursue this passion and to be able to exercise and articulate and do what he has done over, 27 years. We've only been doing it for 2.5, 3 years-ish.
If we count the campaign, yeah. That's crazy. It seems like
Think about that.
Time.
Just 24 more years.
And it's not just that. Operate within a framework that he does not approve of. So having to play by their rules so that he can have influence. Because I think he ran for the president of the EU Parliament.
Yeah.
That's not a job he even wanted to. It's kind of like a Kokesh thing here. It's like, I'm gonna get in charge. I can take it all apart.
Exactly.
And then being slandered for. I think the first things I ever heard about Nigel Farage was he's a racist and a bigot and the
xenophobe,
the usual stuff they throw against
homophobe. It's all the arguments lost. Let's start hurling insults to attack his character. And that's the thing is, I don't follow Nigel all the time, but I can't help but think that you don't get to this level by being outwardly bigoted or racist or homophobic or xenophobic or an anti-Semite
you can. If not, there wouldn't have been the rise of Hitler.
Sure. But is this guy asking for people to kill? No, he's just like, hey guys. And like I said, we'll get into the speech here in a second. But the fact that he knocks this thing out of the park in terms of, hey, Europe, we love you. We just hate the European Union. Like that needed to be said. And I think, you could see, hey, no, look, we're brothers. We're all out here. You're a country, we're a country, and this decentralized idea is a good thing for all of us.
So when do we get a speech like that by, I don't know, a Rand Paul or something like, hey, all the states are cool, like we can all get along, we just hate the government?
Well, we're going to be launching this campaign for U.S. Senate here pretty soon. I guarantee you it's going to be part of my platform.
That's a pretty cool slogan. It's like, I love the country, I hate the government.
Yeah.
I've heard people say it before, like it's not new.
I'm all for it.
But for a politician saying that, it's somewhat new.
I'm all for a DC exit, man. You look at the control in this tiny little place called DC that absolutely has invaded the rest of the country. It's gross. It's so much more pandemic than the crown was in the 13 colonies back in the day. The atrocities, the life and liberty and property that DC has taken through fiat bureaucracy and unelected officials, it's asinine and insane that anybody thinks that this is sustainable.
I would think that the average person back in the day of the English Empire had more contempt for the Queen and the King and so forth than today the average person has contempt for the government as an entity.
It's weird, isn't it?
Isn't it weird?
It's almost like you could...
And it's kind of because the king and the queen, I'm sure there's lots of pretense, but there wasn't necessarily a pretense that they cared for everybody and wanted good for everybody. It was that they were basically God.
Sure.
But the government has done such a good job, I think school is probably a big part of it, being like, we're not God. We're here to be your loving mother and father.
Well, and here I think you nail it when you say the king and queen. There was more animosity and hatred, right? If you can funnel and focus hatred, right, or anger or whatever the people are feeling onto a central person, it's a much easier thing to look at and go, oh yeah, I see why. I see how people.
That's a good point.
Like all got together and wanted to storm the walls and chop off some heads. Like it doesn't seem like that big a deal. Now, when you look at the U.S. government in terms of D.C. and the bureaucracy, what they've done is a really effective job of spreading things out.
They've decentralized the centralization.
Yes, they have. It's a weird thing, isn't it?
It is weird.
It's
smart. It's what you talk about. Your talents as a recon marine. What do you call that?
Reconnoitering. Reconnaissance?
No,
disruption?
Yeah, just disrupting and
dividing.
Yeah, and separating the people in an area,
Sure.
and then pitting them against each other, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because that's what happened. They've separated their power, so we have all these things to focus on. And then they've said to some people, "Hey, these are the good guys." To some other people, "These are the good guys."
That's right.
And now we hate each other because those people are evil.
Yeah,
I mean that's pretty bad.
It's terrible. It's
There's
one of the most damn evil inventions ever.
There's this comedian, I forget her name. She's Canadian. She's really funny. And she was doing these interviews with kids and kind of asking them about like soft political questions.
Yeah.
And Trump goes in there, and she asked this little girl who's probably 5 or 6, if you had a friend who liked Donald Trump, could you be friends with them? And she was like, no. Like, that's how bad it is. A 5 or 6-year-old is like, thinks that if somebody likes Donald Trump, you cannot be their friend.
That's incredible. And just one more of the millions of reasons that government indoctrination should also be ended. What a farce. You want to get into
the video,
Mr. Nigel's speech?
I think so.
I have a couple other points in terms of some of the things I think that were major turning points for why Brexit happened. Okay. But we'll get through Nigel first, and I think kind of wrap up with that.
To the road, a 47-year political experiment that the British, frankly, have never been very happy with. My mother and father signed up to a common market, not to a political union, not to flags, anthems, presidents, and now you even want your own army. For me...
I'm going to stop it there for a second. I think... the fact that the European Union wants its own army and it's obviously got a new magical skycloth and a new anthem and all that kind of stuff, I think he makes some very interesting points here.
It's been a gradual thing. We talked the other day that they have like unemployment laws, right?
Yeah.
Or standards. There's almost no facet of life that they don't want to have influence on, and they have this weird way because that they have to kind of succumb to that you wouldn't have to succumb to here in the States, because so many people just view the federal government as, well, that's the government. We're like, oh no, we don't want to replace these national initiatives. So whatever it is, national social securities in France and Spain and
NHS
so forth.
and yeah.
We just want to complement them. And to me, if I was Nigel, and I'm sure he's had these thoughts and probably expressed it much more eloquently than I could, it would be the most insulting thing to be like, the logical conclusion of you doing it, if we look at any history, is that you're going to take away our sovereignty. And you know this, but you use these nice words of, no, it's just going to be like side by side. It's like saying, you know what, there's this kid and he has parents. We're just going to put like a second pair of parents. Like, no, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay. There's going to be a problem there.
Yeah. And I think it gets. I mean, pinning. We used to use this term in the military, pinning the rose, right? Pinning that big stinky rose on somebody. There's accountability and responsibility. When you get into the centralization, there's none of that. There's none of that, and he knows that very well. As soon as you start thinking about setting up a military-industrial complex, I don't care if it's for your town, I don't care if it's for your state, I don't care if it's for a nation or a global type place. What you're doing is, first and foremost, what we talked about with the Anti-Federalists, which I don't think has aired. It hasn't even aired yet. Boy, man, we got shows for days. Anyway.
11 and 12, guys.
11 and 12. In Anti-Federalist 11, which you guys will hear, is the idea that when a government can indebt you, it can enslave you. And that's what it does. As soon as a government can take debt out in your name, it enslaves you, because what's going to happen? They're going to start to say, well, we've got to start raising revenue to pay for this debt that we incurred in your name. And oh, by the way, because you're a citizen, even if you didn't vote for whatever this thing is, and our math is god awful, we don't understand Austrian economics, you're going to pay for it. And you're going to pay for it. Your kids are going to pay for it. And then eventually, at some point, the whole thing is going to fail.
Absolutely. And then there's just the fact that, so all these national states, these countries have their own armies, yet you're going to have another army that's in complement, but they have more power because they're the army of all of those together.
Yeah.
So you intrinsically have this thing. It's like when you watch like a cop show on TV and the local cops are there and they're like, oh no, the FBI is coming in, we're going to be pushed out. Yeah, because the FBI gets to go in all the states, and you're just the locality. So by some like math of power of like what they can do, they have more, and that automatically takes away from the sovereignty of the local
Especially
people.
when your local sheriff doesn't understand his constitutional role, and he can tell the feds to pound sand, and if you come in here, I'll deputize every man and woman, and we will arrest you and jail you. That's the thing is, man, yeah, I will go down rabbit holes. Let's listen to more of Mr. Nigel.
And over 20 years here in this Parliament. I'm not particularly happy with the agreement we're being asked to vote on tonight. But Boris has been remarkably bold in the last few months. And Ms von der Leyen, he's made it clear, he's promised us there'll be no level playing field. And on that basis, I wish him every success in the next round of negotiations. I really do. But the most significant point is this. What happens at 11 p.m. this Friday, the 31st of January, 2020, marks the point of no return. Once we've left, we are never coming back, and the rest, frankly, is detail. We're going, we will be gone. And that should be the summit of my own political ambitions. I walked in here, as I've said before, you all thought it was terribly funny. You stopped laughing in 2016. But my view has changed of Europe since I joined. In 2005, I saw the constitution that had been drafted by Giscard and others. I saw it rejected by the French in a referendum. I saw it rejected by the Dutch in a referendum. And I saw you in these institutions ignore them, bring it back as the Lisbon Treaty, and boast you could ram it through without there being referendums. Well, the Irish did have a vote and did say no and were forced to vote again. You're very good at making people vote again, but what we've proved is the British are too big to bully.
This was a great part of his speech. You know, when he comes out and kind of shows the mechanics of how the tone deaf bureaucracy that's out there already is absolutely not listening and doesn't take, you know, what the citizenry, the democracy, and let's face it, that's kind of what they have over there is mob rule. It's just the way it is. Even the democracy isn't working. And when democracy isn't working, that's when you start to see this grinding in society, right?
Well, I don't think it's just that. I think he's acknowledging and pointing out to them that there's this double standard. Is they'll hold up and talk about the rule of law until those rules don't apply to you. It's the problem that everybody has in their life, that if they're not consistent, there's going to be consequences to those inconsistencies. It's kind of what they're just like, well, we're just going to ignore it. They're just going to vote again, or they're going to have referendums and nothing happens. Apparently, the French don't care.
Wait, can you relate to that to anything here in the United States?
The same kind of idea? Yeah, it happens all the time. Georgia in 2015, there was a referendum to put a new tax. I forget what it was called. It was like 1% tax.
2016, was it was it one of the ones with transportation and highway? Yeah,
the transportation tax. It failed by a huge margin, like 75% said no or something like that.
And what'd they do?
And in 2018, they passed it as legislation.
Sure.
And they got called out on it. And most people don't care because the propaganda works pretty well. And most people are checked out anyways. And he's saying that they did the same things. Like they voted on it because what they do is like they want all the accolades of winning in the proper way.
Yeah.
But they don't, because it's better, but they'll still do it the other way. It doesn't matter. Like they'll get what they want either way. They just are quite efficient tyrants, and they prefer to be applauded for their tyrancy. That's not a word.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the thing is, they're going to be tyrants and despots, and they're going to push whatever their agenda is in the first place.
It's what politicians do everywhere, anyways.
Yeah, they just don't take no for answers. They're like even worse military recruiters. You know what I mean? Like they just will not take no for an answer. It's high pressure sales.
It's like if a military recruiter gave you the whole sales pitch, all the pressure and so forth, and then you said no, and then took a gun to your head and was like, "You're going to do it anyways," which is what the draft is basically.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I fell into that one like by myself.
We say that all the time. Gun pointed at your head. haha, right? Like gun pointed at your head, what would you do? Well, I guess if there's a gun pointed at my head, Jesus,
I'll do whatever the gun says.
That's right. I think, I when I think about this, I think about kind of, because what they're trying to do is ratchet back. One of the hardest things to do with any government out there is pull that government back and put it back in a box. Once it's tasted the power and the profits and the money and stood up organizations and put people in places.
Yeah, and in some weird way just become the default, because a lot of people start from the default. That's why it's often so hard to get people to question things. They're just like, well, that's the way things are. I mean, if you're born into in a prison, you'd probably get used to not being able to go outside when you wanted to, use the bathroom when you want to.
It's just normal, guys. This is how we keep the peace.
That's I said go to the bathroom when you want to. I guess that's not necessarily the case in prison, but
it's the case in the Marine Corps boot camp. I'll tell you that.
But in schools, it's like, have you ever, when there was that transition like to high school, and I didn't go after that, but there was this transition weirdly where there were some teachers, at least in France, that would let you go to the bathroom without asking, but it was like it was hard to get used to. You'd still like almost forget and raise your hand to ask.
Think about this. This has got to be one of the strangest things that Americans do, right? And we'll get back to school for a second because it's just so horrendous. I mean, it's drilled into you from the very, very beginning that you will ask permission to do natural things. How crazy is that? How crazy is it? Hey, man, I've got to go in there and drop bombs, or I got to go in there and take a leak. Are you kidding me? I got to ask permission from a teacher? What if she says no, or he says, but let's just face it, 90+% of teachers are females.
You think?
I think the overwhelming majority, yes. Yeah. Just from personal experience, I don't remember a ton of males. I mean, there were entire grade levels without males.
I don't think I ever had that. But I think it was like 50-50 for me for some reason.
To think that, a public school teacher has control over your digestive tract.
I mean, as for little kids, I can kind of understand you have to keep track of them.
No. The thing is keeping track of little kids in that situation, you know where the restroom is? It's in the classroom. So especially down here, like you had this door, and then it went into two other doors that connected to the next classroom over, where there was also another adult in that room, at least one, and there were two little bathrooms in between.
Huh.
Yeah, you just went in there and did your business. Not interrupting anybody. You know what interrupts people in the entire class is when you are put on the spot and the teacher says, we will not take bathroom breaks during class, right? And
I don't see how that's natural and makes people functioning adults.
No, it doesn't. And the thing is you get used to it, right? Because now you are shamed in front of the entire class because you've got a damn emergency that you cannot control.
No, what shouldn't be an emergency, actually. What should be just part of normal life, because that's what you do when you live.
There are emergency bathrooms. Like, even, let's face it, man.
Yes, but most of these circumstances are making an emergency out of something that should not be an emergency.
Yeah, let's just face it. When you've had cafeteria chili, and it's a race with the devil sometimes, you're trying to get there. But what I'm saying is, juxtapose that. I remember getting to college, right? Mm-hmm. Getting to college.
I bet there are some people who raise their hand and ask to go to the bathroom in college.
And for people to go, oh, wow, we don't have to ask to go to the bathroom here? You're a functioning adult. You're an American. And like, we've been so indoctrinated to that point. And that's what I'm saying is like this whole thing, you're shamed.
There's that great scene, a cultural reference you're going to love.
Yeah.
From the favorite movie in the world by most people, which is Shawshank Redemption. Remember when Red gets out of prison in the end on parole and goes and works at that little.
He has no idea how to function.
The grocery store.
Yeah.
Like he asked the boss. He's like, "Can I use the restroom?" And the boss is like,
"You don't have to ask."
Yeah, don't stop asking that.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's life inside of centralized control. All right, let's listen to Nigel
How
continue.
do we start talking about that?
Goodness. So I became an outright opponent of the entire European project. I want Brexit to start a debate across the rest of Europe. What do we want from Europe? If we want trade, friendship, cooperation, reciprocity. We don't need a European Commission. We don't need a European Court. We don't need these institutions and all of this power. And I can promise you, both in UKIP and indeed in the Brexit Party, we love Europe. We just hate the European Union. It's as simple as that.
People ask me all the time, Shane, if the states have the right to secede, how is this going to work? Right? If we want friendship and we want trade and we want reciprocity, those are free. Those are all free things.
Well, it's the things that, so the European Union was founded based on like that first thing, like the market cooperation, and literally the need for that market cooperation is only due to one thing: governments pre-existing and making markets more closed.
Yeah. I don't.
The whole problem is there being too much government in the first place.
That's exactly right. We don't need government in our transactions.
It's like me wanting to, like, you do the Apple sales all the time. It's like me wanting to give an apple to Shane, and for some reason we live on each side of a border, and I'm about to hand Shane the apple across the border, and somebody's like, whoa,
what are you doing?
We need a system so we can make this happen.
Shane, how do you know that's an apple? Please pay me $1 to make sure that that's an apple for you. Banks, do you have a license to sell that apple? How are you even growing these things? I mean, seriously, is it an apple? What species of apple is that? Because some apples aren't great for the human body. They're probably more of like food and trough for livestock kind of food.
And then before you get the time to answer, like, and for this great service, we're going to have to take some of that profit you made. You're welcome.
And by the way, if you don't agree to it,
Shane just pulled out some finger guns.
We're going to shoot
This is the thumbnail, by the way.
Yeah, we're going to shoot you, right? Like that's government. Reciprocity, friendship, and trade are free. Friendship, reciprocity, and trade are free. I feel like I'm in a school, or I feel like I'm starting a drum circle where people could start. Reciprocity and friendship and trade are free. Repeat after me all the time. Like, we don't need government to do those things.
For a few people who might be trying to find holes in the argument, as much as I agree, some people will be like, oh, well, sometimes it takes coordination. Okay, that coordination to make things happen because we have wants, and some of those wants are make money because some other people have wants that we can give them their wants in exchange for money. Yeah. Those needs and wants of all those people is going to make it happen anyways. And there can be a cost to that. There can be a logistical cost. And then people who solve those problems,
you are not wrong.
The Ubers of the world and I don't know, transport of the world and so forth are going to profit from filling that need.
You say
it's magical.
You say there's a private fix? So if
I am explaining the free market, but
if I'm not an expert on something and I need to acquire what that thing is, right? Because let's face it, I don't know how to make Apple phones. I have no idea. I have zero idea. I don't have, a person, besides, FedEx that can get it to me. But like to be that niche in the market, that technical wizard that can sit there in this day and age and create videos using the Apple phone that I want to buy and putting things together like this, a podcast or a YouTube channel or something like that can educate me on everything that this tool can do for me, because I am not the expert. It's sales. You pay those people who sell your stuff like crazy. The market will the market will answer every damn time you do it.
But then everything's going to cost so much money, and poor people are not going to have anything, Shane.
Oh boy. Well, you know what?
If only there was proof that was categorically false.
Let's do that proof real quick, because this is fun. Monopolies are not intrinsically a bad thing. Okay? Government monopolies are absolutely one of the most evil things there can be. Why? Because there's no accountability, there's no market signals, there's no price index, there's no accountability.
Well, and it's because what is the monopoly on? The monopoly is on force.
So
there's nobody's allowed to defend themselves against the people who have the monopoly on force.
And the thing is you're also removing the brain trust that is the individual, right? Mm-hmm. The conglomeration of individuals. Now, if you're removing the brain trust from a situation to solve a problem, and you're centralizing it into a couple brains, you're obviously not doing anything for that problem. I'm reading this book right now called The Invention of Air, where
You told me about that.
boy, it is fascinating. Where this Priestley is this guy who's kind of the main scientist in discovering different types of air and all this kind of stuff. He was good friends with Ben Franklin, and they talk about how when they started these little coffee houses in the UK and they started caffeinating brains instead of pouring alcohol into brains, and having this communication where these ideas traveled faster and there were more of them for the first time in well, I don't want to say human history, but in a lot of our later recorded history.
That's funny. I was listening to a podcast just the other day that was making the argument of like the introduction of substances, so coffee, cocaine, depressants, and so forth, and the correlation to culture, so music. And music, because musicians are notoriously known for using a lot of drugs.
Yeah, that's why the 70s
there
and
is
early
a
late 60s
there is
were
a
awesome.
correlation to the number of beats in a category of music based on what kind of drugs were used at that time.
Yeah.
It's like off subject completely, but
it's all relevant
fascinating.
though. It's all very relevant though, because when you let markets function freely, right? Like there wasn't a market for rock and roll. Can you imagine if government was in charge of rock and roll? There would have been no psilocybin. There would have been there would have been no cannabis, LSD, or whatever they call it, DMT these days, or whatever they're calling it. There would have been none of those things involved in terms of creating rock and roll, right? Rock and roll is a market. Now, let's talk about, we briefly described the monopoly on force, that, if a government has a monopoly on something, then it's an evil thing. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem is people can't hold two ideas of monopoly at the same time. If there's a monopoly in the private market, what does that mean?
It means that they're providing a service and product that people want, because as soon as people don't want it, their monopoly is not going to go away like that. Okay, where we live in reality and things take time, but it's going to slowly dwindle. But
let's also make the point that in a monopoly, in a private market monopoly, where there are no entries into market, or there are no barriers into market, what has to happen? You have to have either a good or service that is in demand, first and foremost. That doesn't exclude anybody from getting into that market, okay? You can provide the same good or service. Now, this is what separates, being a pluralistic type of market versus a monopoly type of market. The monopoly market is where somebody is able to provide that good or service to that market at the lowest price. That is an exceptional thing, because that drives cost down. Always. It always has. It always will. So when you remove the barriers to entry, when you remove the government from the equation and the market is allowed to operate, the only way somebody is going to be successful is if they provide a good or service to that market at a good price, or the best price, and that is good for everybody who's consuming that good or service. That's just the way markets work.
No, I completely agree. And I think the premise we were trying to say on top of that was that, and nothing's going to be free, and yet we show that all the things we just talked about in our modern world, and I think we're going to do an episode about this at some point, and then we've just never done it. But of all the free things out there, everything, like all this information is pretty free.
Yeah, you pay for a service.
You've got every single one of your apps, because the market has realized that you don't want to pay for a lot of stuff, is like, hey, here, have it free.
Yeah,
Google free, and
we'll figure it out.
And there's a trade of some sort, like you're trading data and so forth, but it's available to you for no monetary cost.
I think this is where the paradigm picks up too, right? In 2020 paradigm speak, right? It's following. What does your brand do? How many people does your brand have? Your brand, the more numbers your brand has, I don't care if it's the Rebellion or YouTube. There are billions of people on YouTube. And so they can demand people pay them for advertisement. That's where you want to be. If you grow a brand big enough and you're providing a good service and people see that you're good people, it's not black magic. This is just part of the equation in this paradigm, in this age now. And like Nigel's stating here very succinctly, we don't need any of you in terms of government to help us trade, to have friendship, and to have reciprocity. We got to figure that out as people.
A little bit different. He's saying we don't need this bigger overarching government.
He's not quite as far down the line as I am. I know.
He's probably. I wonder how close he is because I know he's been to quite a few Yale events.
Sure, he has. Yeah.
And that makes me a little bit more confident.
Little liberty curious, maybe.
Maybe.
Let's listen to some more from Nigel.
So I'm hoping this begins the end of this project. It's a bad project. It isn't just undemocratic, it's anti-democratic, and it puts in that front row. It gives people power without accountability. People who cannot be held to account by the electorate, and that is an unacceptable structure. Indeed, there's an historic battle going on now across the West, in Europe, America, and elsewhere. It is globalism against populism. And you may loathe populism, but I tell you a funny thing, it's becoming very popular. And it has great benefits. No more financial contributions, no more European Court of Justice, no more common fisheries policy, no more being talked down to, no more being bullied, no more Guy Verhofstadt. I mean, what's...
All right, I gotta stop here. What is the last part?
I have no idea.
I have no idea either, man.
I didn't look it up. I was more intrigued by the use of the term populism, and it led me down this whole road of thinking that I hope I can reiterate. It's a dangerous part here, and the way he used it is all funny, and he's obviously charismatic and has this really interesting cadence of speak, but he said, no more being talked down to, no more being bullied. That is the main reason populism in America and in the UK is popular, and it's because it's gotten so bad from the other side that simply pushing back is enough for them. That's how bad it's gotten. Mm-hmm. And there's still a lesser of two evils there, but because most people are not thinking super analytically about the most efficient way to get products and services to the people, because that's what we rate our happiness with mostly, right? Mm-hmm. People will end there. And I think I wrote down, I wonder if it's a reason, and this is just me thinking out loud, to be less harsh about the things that don't matter. Like, I don't take Sky Cloths and Anthems.
Oh, yeah, right.
And so forth, and so forth that seriously. And so sometimes I'll mock it. It happens quite often, even.
Yeah, sure.
But I wonder if it's less important to mock it because these people are not viewing it as what it represents. They're viewing it as this main emotion, which is the emotion behind populism. And so I kind of want to extend them an olive branch.
I do too. And
just be, your frustration is so well deserved. Like, it's the most deserved.
Yeah.
That frustration, and it's kind of what Matt Gertler, my friend, our friend, kind of talks about, where like the federal government is bad and the state government is just the same as the federal government on this model level. Yeah. And I wonder if people just don't want to hear that because well, that's depressing.
Well, people don't want to hear it. I mean, you just look at. I mean, what are we sitting at, like a 9?
But they obviously can hear it because they've already heard it for a higher level. But the same reasons that they hate the EU are the same reasons that they should hate the British government.
Sure, I definitely agree with you on all of this, man. What I see though, in terms of the way humans react, right? It's because at their state, local level, they feel like they know these people. And this is where you get into most people are good people, and like that's the thing, is even these people who are indebting and enslaving and having executives point guns at these people, they love them. It's crazy to me. It's crazy for me to hold those things in my head at the same time.
Well, I think it's the hope and change thing. Like, well, those are the two main currencies of politics. Right. Like Obama, or whoever wrote that for Obama, was brilliant, because that's what people.
Well, and people don't like confrontation. That's the problem too. Is people?
There's probably that too.
People don't want to be like. People don't want to have that confrontation, especially with somebody where let's face it. Most people are not me. They're not you, and they don't. First and foremost, they don't articulate well in front of crowds. They don't articulate in front of power well either.
That's one of the main reasons, we talked about this last time, that I love so much the LP presidential candidate who like had a little bit of a hard time getting out what he wanted to get out. Yeah. Like, my favorite part about that was like,
he's trying.
I want more people be. And so when I stutter in front of crowds, I've got this weird, stupid thought in my head of, ooh, I could stutter more. And then people might be like, oh, I can do it too because I don't stutter. So
I love that idea. That's a great idea, man. Where was I going?
Sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, when you look at Congress, especially, and you see the overwhelming disapproval rate, like I think 9% is what we approve.
Yes, but just the other day I was reading an approval rating for Republicans of Republicans in Congress, and it was like 80% or something.
Gross.
So there's a perversion that goes against what people know is true, because what's true is 9%, because there's 9% of, I don't know.
But you're proving
people who just don't
like,
are not thinking.
This is my whole point, right? It's like you think your team is okay. You think your team is doing well. You think your team, your tribe, your sect, your whatever it is that you think you're a part of, you think that person who is quote unquote your representative is doing a good job. They're not. And that's where you get the 90% reelection rate. If 9% of Congress is it has an approval, right? Only 9%
should get reelected.
Right?
Well, so the approval rating is based off of a poll of all Americans, and only, I don't know, probably a third of Americans vote in congressional races. So that we're
kind of getting into some weird area. But what you say hammers home that exactly is like, listen, I don't care what party you're part of. I really don't care. The people who are in Congress with that 9% approval rating, you think that your guys are about 80%, right? Like 80%. Mm-hmm. That is crazy. Your guys are the same guys out there from, you look at the Freedom Index from, where we look at it from a constitutional perspective even, right? The Constitution isn't perfect. We're going to go ahead and say that again. Disclaim.
They have not heard it enough. In case you wanted to know how unperfect the Constitution is, search Original Documents or Federalist Papers.
Anti-Federalist Papers.
On the website. Anti-Federalist Papers.
Yeah.
And you'll have all the reasons why. And there's like 70 more to go.
But people have got to stop placating and being afraid to speak to power and hold them accountable and change them out. That idea that you, for some reason, are somehow close or know or love your representatives. I don't care if it's your sheriff. I don't care if it's city council, county commission. I don't care if it's your state representatives or your national representatives. Those people deserve to be looked at as criminals all the time.
Or at the very least, if you look at your own representative, and let's talk about just the president. If you look at the president and you're a Trump supporter and you think he's awesome, you should at least try to allow your brain to find one imperfect thing about him.
Yeah, for just intellectual honesty.
And be able and try to talk about that with other people who agree with you and have that be okay. Because if you cannot do that,
you can't dissent.
You can't dissent. You can't have critical thought.
Yeah.
You can't. You will not realize if that person, and everybody knows, people can betray you. Okay, it has all happened in our lives by one person or another. It has happened by politicians with like categorical proof. Okay, we all know that George Bush was an idiot now, right? For many reasons, the worst being the war in Iraq. You know that's true. So why would you not? Why would you want to make it impossible for you to recognize that when it happens again?
Yeah,
that seems dangerous. But I did have another hypothesis, and as much as I think it's probably a little mix of both, the other one is you've got this populism that is popular. I fell into Nigel's trap.
It is definitely growing.
Where they're more outspoken. You've got the whole Trump thing that he's brash, and Boris Johnson he's got a different style, but he's also pretty brash, and Nigel is like in your face.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if it's a mix of both, and the other side just being that we need to be a little less polite, a little less politically correct, which is a very well-known term at this point. And it made me think of this quote by John Adams. And getting, as much as John Adams violated his own principles multiple times, getting some wisdom from the founding fathers is usually helpful. And he said, "Be not intimidated, nor suffer yourselves to be wielded out of your liberties by any pretense of politeness, delicacy, or decency. These, as they are often used, are but three different names for hypocrisy, chicanery, and cowardice.
Yeah. And now add to that in common speak, political correctness.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of the populism that is popular, man, third time, is because they do this less. They are less wielded out of their liberties, or at least the liberty to say what they think, because of like these pretenses.
Yeah. So let's real quick question. In terms of populism, are you for or against it?
A yes or no statement?
No, I mean, you answer however you like. It's an open question.
I'm not for it.
What? So I do this as devil's advocate, because if all of a sudden populism means everybody goes to principles of liberty.
Woohoo!
I love populism. I just say that.
No, I totally understand your question. It's I haven't thought about it, so I have to like analyze a little bit, but it's just the way that the world works.
Yeah. It's pendulum swinging again is what I see.
Sure.
And I can't help but think that I like that it's swinging in this direction towards
but that's actually,
decentralization.
okay.
Yeah.
It's made me think of something that I think is important.
Okay.
Even if populism, if that is of liberty, okay, like 99% of the ideas on the rebellion became the popular thing, and we could just go out there and be like, the rebellion, and people would cheer back. I think it would be the responsibility, not the duty, but the responsibility of people who were not following populism for populism's sake to make the points we made before about critical thinking, about how power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Those things that go beyond what is popular and that allow you to see the cracks in something that is otherwise good.
Sure.
Right? The same things that hopefully your parents teach you that later you use to notice how imperfect your parents were.
Yeah. So a warning, and maybe you can pass this on to, your populist friends who are populist for other reasons than principle, whether it's a political party,
anger,
or emotion, or a politician, or a personality. Man, you can never ever, you cannot safely build populism on anything other than, I think, founding principles.
If somebody does not want to teach you or want to lead you, or their speeches don't lead you to the same level as them, with the same accountability as them, which again, to me, it goes back to parents for some reason, because I feel like that's the genesis of how an adult population would understand this concept. If they're not leading you there, then that can't be trusted. So if you're just talking about populism, just talking about how popular things are, there's nothing else there. If you're talking about populism and about ideas and how these ideas need to continue, and maybe the dangers about how these ideas can be lost one day, which is what the founding fathers did multiple times. A republic, if you can keep it, even if you think the concept of a republic is flawed, like, you can't trust those people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about that too. I mean, a republic, if you can keep it. What do you mean?
The government is populism is basically a parent saying, because I said so. Yeah. And them like wearing the T-shirt you like. It's like, oh, that's the T-shirt I like, so I'm cool with them. No, you want a parent who is willing to answer your questions, and if you're willing to answer questions, at some point you're willing to be wrong. Yeah,
and learn. Yeah, which I think is even the bigger takeaway.
You're some weird rabbit holes, my friend.
I love them. I think that's what to have this debate because of Nigel. Think about that, man. Think about what Nigel is inspiring. It's incredible.
Looks alike. I know you're going to miss us. I know you want to ban our national flags, but we're going to wave you goodbye, and we'll look forward in the future to working with you as sovereign.
If you disobey the rules, you get cut off. Could we please remove the flags?
Oh.
So you know what her voice made me think of? It made me think of...
I wish you had a clip.
Of the elite in the Hunger Games.
Oh.
Because they've got these rules that they've established, right? And just the fact that they get to call them rules make them virtuous. So it's like, may the odds be ever in your favor. Yeah. And this is the rules. You get to go into an arena and kill yourself to death. Yeah. But they don't go into the details. It's these are the rules, and if you can't go out. These are the rules. What are you talking about?
Can't question.
If I say it in this very elitist and snobby voice, of course it makes sense.
It kills me that she's Irish, man.
Was she Irish?
I gotta assume from the dialect.
So much snobbery and elitism that I just couldn't even hear what she was saying. I was like, ugh, just
Doesn't all the Irish people that I know, and I have roots from a very Irish ancestry as well. They're the most jolly, good-natured, laughable, don't take themselves very seriously type people from what my interaction is with the Irish, and I've always felt this kinship. This lady destroys that, man. Oh God! In a single breath, in a single sentence, if you don't abide by the rules, then you get cut off. Like, who the F are you?
Somebody who is an elitist who thinks that other people are not on the same thinking level as her, and that some people deserve to be controlled.
Yeah.
That's what she is. I love how they had hidden the little flags,
example.
And they all took their flags out, the British people, and stood up, and then some people had these ties they were hiding underneath their coat that had the British flag on it. Like, as much as I don't like the British flag, that was pretty cool.
It was a great. I think I wanted to let her. I want to finish up with her because her intro into this by cutting Nigel off and stating that if you're not following the rules, then you're going to get cut off. What a perfect example of why you're leaving. Like, if I'm not playing by your rules and I represent a sovereign nation, and you have the power to cut me off from just speaking. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of in terms of words? If you're afraid of something that somebody's going to say, boy, you're probably up to something fairly dubious.
It's a really weird thing because that room there has European flags everywhere.
Oh, it's gross.
It's on the podium. It's on the microphone.
It's a circle.
Yeah.
It's a circle and stars and seats.
Are you finishing the video here? Because there's another point she makes at the very end that is...
That's what I'm about to do,
okay.
Where she starts to try to already... And I hope, I think our audience will pick up on this. She's already going to start to paint these people as something. I hope you catch it.
Mr. Farage, could we remove the flags, please?
That's it. It's all over. Finished. We're gone.
Could I please ask for quiet?
Are they saying hip hip hooray?
Yeah. So right now, Nigel is sitting. Okay, Nigel's sitting. He said, "Hey, it's up. It's it. It's over. We're gone." And the British delegates in here, man, they three cheers for Nigel Farage, and then hip hip hooray, hip hip hooray, hip hip hooray, man. And he is sitting there, very humble, on his seat, smiling. I think going, this was what I was waiting for. This was the moment that he was waiting for, and I think he is vindicated in his actions here. So we'll finish up with her real quick. No sense of humor.
Please sit down, resume your seats, put your flags away, you're leaving, and take them with you if you are leaving now.
Can't tell us what to do anymore.
Goodbye. Can I just say, if I may say, just in a slight reference, the word hate was used in the last contribution.
So she goes on. I didn't stop it. That's where that video.
What, really? Oh,
do you have the rest of that?
Yes, I do, because it's
telling.
It's quite interesting. Have you not seen the end?
I have seen the end.
Okay.
I thought it was the end, the full video.
I'll play
here.
it 'cause it's fascinating. So
So
I don't repeat anything. Do you want to talk?
No. I was just gonna say I was just filling some air while you're getting it ready.
I got it.
Please sit down, resume your seats, put your flags away, you're leaving,
She's
and
Irish.
take them with you if you are leaving now.
Sorry for the repetition there.
Can I just say, if I may say, just in a slight reference, the word hate was used in the last contribution. And I really think, given what we listened to prior to this, that we should not hate anyone or any nation or any people.
Can we stop for a second?
Yeah, I think that's the end.
Yeah. What Nigel said was, we love Europe. We want to be your neighbor. We want to trade with you. We want reciprocity. We want to be with our brothers and sisters of Europe. We just hate the European Union. He hates the government.
He hates an entity, and she takes all this offense to an entity with this like high horse, like social justice warrior type response. And I couldn't help but be like,
yeah,
the Nazis were like a group of people.
Yeah.
Cannibals are groups of people. Are we not allowed to hate cannibals and Nazis? Maybe I shouldn't even hate like cannibals. I should try to love
the
them.
individuals,
so
right?
Maybe they stop eating people and so forth. But no, yeah, I hate cannibals and I hate Nazis.
Yeah.
I think that's an okay thing to do. There are things that are bad, and especially if we're talking about entities, non-people, like structures.
What are they call
structures
them?
that represent rules.
Legal fictions.
Yeah, legal fictions represent rules that oppress people
and point guns at people and cage people.
I can hate that. It's not even people or nations.
The fact that she's trying to turn this on the head and make Nigel the bad guy here. It is absolutely so telling. The playbook is
it's the same as the Hunger Games.
They do it all
it's
the time.
Same snobbery, because when you push back, I wish I had better references from the Hunger Games, but there are multiple times when you push back, and then the elite in the Hunger Games are like, but we're the civilized ones. Don't look at us. We know how to talk, and we know how to dress, and we know how to eat and have fun, and we've given you this whole system of the Hunger Games that everybody loves. It's the same thing she's doing. First, she shows them this control there that just because I say the rules, it implies that they're virtuous, and then she'll take the high road and pretend to be offended because she's brought you all these wonderful things that you just don't like for some stupid reason because you're not smart enough.
Yeah, She you have more from her?
I think it might be over. Let's see. It's a few more seconds. Yeah, it's done. But I thought that was, I don't know why the other video cut that part off, because it's not much more, and I thought it was very telling.
Oh, yeah. And maybe they cut it off because it was very telling.
Even the fact that she says, this is over, as implying the conversation's over, the whole thing's over, and then, but she reserved to herself, like, the last word. It's like, oh, yeah, you do want control and to play on an unlevel playing field, don't you?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I can tell. What's our time frame right now?
We are sitting at 1:12. I was just over here.
1:12. So I do have
Happy Hunger Games, and may the odds be ever in your favor.
Do you hear the tone?
Oh, it is perfect. It's acceptance of something so evil.
It's like if you
it's
say
like
it
dripping.
If you say it nicely enough, though, it's supposed to imply with a little bit of threat and a little bit of it's like the smiling threat, like,
oh yeah, do you know how many guns are behind me?
Yeah.
Oh, don't even think about it. Don't even think about going that way.
And most of the threat, sadly, comes from most of the other people accepting the threat at the same time.
Well,
so you feel powerless
because they're paid by it. Their whole entire life.
Well, no,
a lot of them.
There's also the people who aren't paid by it, who I think feel a pressure because of everybody feeling the pressure at the same time, and it's hard to be like the first one to stand out and be like, "Screw you!" Get shot in the head.
I mean, while we're talking about government and terribleness, we in the introduction we did play a little bit of "God Save the Queen."
Oh, that's right.
For you guys on YouTube, you probably it's going to be cut out a little bit, but you missed it. But "God Save the Queen." Have you ever actually, before today, looked at the lyrics to "God Save the Queen"?
I don't think so.
I mean, do we just take a giant dump on the whole thing of that? Like, just, hey guys in Britain, we know where you're at in terms of getting away from the European Union. Let us help you a little bit more, baby birds. Or are we feeding too much at this point?
I don't know. I thought that certain I don't want to read the whole thing, but I thought some of the lines were quite interesting, and it has a certain flow to it.
Well,
the end is my favorite part.
I think it's either "God Bless America" or one of the national type, socialist.
This land of liberty. I think you said earlier.
Maybe something like that.
Which I think is just words from another song that I don't know the name of.
Let's talk about this for a second. Maybe if you're from the UK, and maybe if you listen to this, and maybe.
Oh my God, it is copyrighted. By Universal Music.
Is it really?
It is.
That's crazy.
I did the Google search, and it says at the bottom, "God Save the Queen" lyrics at Universal Music, careers, Sony, ATV, Music Publishing. Oh, good Lord.
So I want to read.
I mean, we can still read the lyrics, okay? They can't take that
God
from
save
us.
the Queen. God save our gracious Queen. Long live our noble Queen. God save the Queen. Send her victorious, happy, and glorious. Long to reign over us. Oh, what? How is this a thing in 2020? How is a person who is supported by the government dime, and I say that, government pound in this case, how is it that in 2020 people can live such exclusive and luxurious lives, all based on the fact that they are pointing guns at other people and saying, pay me?
Listen to this part of it. To sing with heart and voice, God save the Queen, not in this land alone, but by God's mercies known from shore to shore. Lord, make the nations see that men should brothers be from one family the wide world over. So that's how you get the idea of this benevolent empire, right?
Well, you want to talk about empires, man. There are a lot of people that think that the U.S. was just one of those places where after the Articles of Confederation were lost and they stood up to the Constitution, that the American Empire basically just became a company of the U.K. You got your president, you got your parliament, and all that crap, or Congress in our case, but it basically still reported back to the U.K. In other words, and I don't know, true, false, whatever, in terms of our relationship with the crown.
I don't think it's true, but I do think there are ties. The worst tie that I know of is the Bar Association for Lawyers,
sure,
which is tied into the tradition that the ultimate bar is in London, and they have a lot of influence over how the legal system works.
Yeah, you look at this and you're just like, man, I don't understand for the life of me in this world. I want to read, I think, kind of the last few lines on here as well.
They're the best ones.
God save the Queen, or her thine arm extend, for Britain's sake defend our mother, princess, and friend. God save the Queen, Lord, grant that Marshal Wade may by thy mighty aid victory bring. May he sedition hush, and like a torrent rush rebellious Scots to crush. God save the Queen. How the hell is this? You're talking about crushing your fellow countrymen at this point. I mean, the Scots are the Scots. And
so countrymen is the thing that the snobby elite Hunger Games type people use, but they don't actually believe it.
Yeah, they'll
say it so that you can't push back against them. But obviously,
yeah, do you want to crush your fellow man on the same island, and they're already part of the UK? Dude, I mean,
so you know what's interesting is there was I believe it was a Scottish politician who at one point told Britain while this whole Brexit was happening, like, hey, we don't want to leave. Scotland wants to remain a part of the EU and so forth. And so the idea is, can the British government now, without being a hypocrite, like push back against Scotland's desire to break off from Britain? No, it's impossible.
It's impossible. And I hope they do it.
I find that prospect quite interesting.
So here's prediction. Here's what will happen. Because, like places like, I want to say, Ireland did not leave the Union. Scotland actually voted to stay part of the Union.
So Ireland, didn't they vote to leave the Union and then they were forced to have another vote?
I guess so. They're not leaving.
And then Denmark took a vote, but nothing ever happened. And France took a vote, and nothing.
So you got Northern Ireland, you got Scotland, and then you got the UK all leaving. The problem is most of Scotland didn't vote for it. Northern Ireland didn't. A lot of London didn't as well. But most of the people in the UK did vote to leave. So now that we've established precedent, and we all know that precedent is the way. Now that you've established precedent, the idea that Scotland can secede, Northern Ireland can secede from the UK. Total secession. It's their right. Obviously, as a people, it's their right. They secede and then they join the European Union. I see it now.
Shane, you're probably right.
Oh,
so
boy.
that is a dilemma for us liberty loving people. You can see the advantages of, for example, we talked about it during Federalist 11, because Federalist 11 had some weird stuff in it, and we didn't necessarily agree that the states needed to have more control over their own industry, right? We just want the government out of it together, the federal government and the state government. So there's an advantage to some degree of bigger countries, because then more people within that country can trade. Yeah. And smaller countries, while we like decentralization, can then make a decision to join bigger countries that have more restrictions. I mean, that's like it's twisting your head around there a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, it is. Here's the thing: is you got to let people do what they want to do, and if they want to, by no force, go and join together and put up trade commissions with other people that are in other trade commissions without force, and I'm fine with that. I don't care.
Yeah, but not all the Scots want to.
No.
And you know what? It takes.
And that's what I'm saying. Individual.
It takes one Scot. Okay, I don't care if 99.9999999% of the people are like, just join the EU. If there's one Scot who lives there and is like, no, then it's a violation of liberty.
Yeah. The one last thing I wanted to talk about real quick, and we kind of hit on it before we went on the air today. I had some buddies. I got a good Scottish buddy that I actually saw this week down in South Georgia, and he's not a big proponent of. He wasn't in the beginning of the Brexit, and now he's just like, just get it over with, for God's sake.
For what reason did he oppose the idea?
I think it's just one of those things where
default is good.
Man, go along, get along. And we've had some conversations since then. We see each other quite often on the road, and we have some great conversations, and open-minded even. Cool. But it's one of those things where ideas that have never been presented to people, especially in their 50s. It's a big, hard, awful red hairy pill to swallow sometimes.
How Scottish is he?
Edinburgh.
So I wonder if he, quick sidetrack, I wonder if he might enjoy listening to the Scottish Libertarian podcast, just because it comes from a Scot with a Scot accent.
I'd never heard it.
Yeah, he's on Tom Woods every so often.
I'll send it to him.
Really smart guy.
Yeah, he may really enjoy it. And God, maybe we'll cross paths and get something going, and have him on the show. Maybe even have a conversation over there. Is he big time?
He's pretty big, yeah.
Yeah.
He was at the Soho Forum a few months ago during one of the debates, arguing for, I forget what argument.
And so after I had obviously commented on this, put it out on Twitter and Facebook and all that fun stuff. One of my buddies from around the Salisbury area over in London said, "Hey mate, this ain't going to be all good for everybody here in the UK, and people are going to lose their jobs and blah 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 blah." And so I understand. Right. But here's the point that I think I made is, listen, we're headed for a correction here too, man. And wherever you're scaling back government and you're scaling back despotism and tyranny and centralization and indebtedness and all this terrible, terrible stuff that comes with government, you're always going to lose jobs, right? Because a government has perverted the market space, and they've put in money into areas where money wouldn't naturally be allocated. And so when that money dries up, naturally, those jobs are going to go away. And people's industries that are protected by those very despotic entities, those things are also going to feel market pressure again, and they will possibly succumb to that market pressure. But that's a good thing. It's like machines, right? For forever, they've been telling us machines are going to replace mankind in terms of our jobs and everything else. What has it done? As machines and technology,
made our lives more comfortable, cheaper,
and it's given us jobs because technology needs people to work on it. It needs people to replace it. It needs people to deliver it to other people. I understand, man. There's going to be some hardship, but it's going to be short term for the most part, I think. And the more the government gets out of the way, the more the market corrects itself. The more people are going to find themselves doing what they are meant to do, and providing goods and services to a market that they want to, versus being propped up and basically held at gunpoint to provide for somebody else.
I can't wait. And my brain, maybe I'm just more seeped into people who think about that in a positive light, but my brain is in such wonder about things like,
me too.
okay, so pizzas are just going to cost like 10 cents because now we got robot. Have you seen the robotic arms?
Robot
making
pizza
pizzas?
makers?
They can make, you should Google this to get the real numbers, but it's something like, I think a human being can make 40 an hour and these machines can make like 200 an hour.
Wow. That's amazing.
And so my idea is like, okay, what that means, a hypothesis at least, is probably 97.5% of pizzas will be made by machines. Like you can just go to like a vending machine and the arms behind it will just do all the work and so forth. And then, and that's great because cheap pizza, and then people don't have to work make pizza, and then you'll have 2.5% of people making pizzas by hand, which will be a place that you'll go to see them make the pizza, that you'll go to with like a big group of friends to have an event. It'll be somebody who's passionate about making the pizza, who loves the smell of dough and
what you're doing,
cutting pepperoni.
What you're doing is providing different pizza for different sects of the market, and you're expanding the market. Yeah.
And we see that today already. There's tons of stuff which is like small hand batched bourbon instead of like
beer, bourbon, pizza. It doesn't matter.
All this stuff that people will pay a premium for because of the experience, because of the fact that it's handmade, because of the attention to detail and so forth, which makes that viable. And then you've got the fact that you can go to the local store and buy a 6-pack for like a few dollars.
Tostino's pizzas.
And get drunk.
$2 for a Tostino's pizza? Man, no. 10 cents. How many more people are you feeding now? How many people are more well-fed now for that advance? Because government got out of the damn way. And
if you can live off of cheaper pizza, then maybe you only need to work half the time at some other job, and you can do some other stuff. Start a podcast, maybe not work, just lay around all day and being lazy. I don't know.
Or
seems like a happier situation.
Or work on your own personal skill set,
or that,
and achieve more. Man,
or achieve less and be happy.
or either or buy a new pair of shoes. I don't know.
So
whatever it is,
I do have 2 videos. One which I want to link to people so they can see the whole thing, but I want to play a few clips from it.
Okay.
Another one which is about 2 minutes long, and it's a Farage thing too.
Okay.
That one I just want to play the whole thing. You can interrupt it if you want to, of course. And because I want people to know what is going to happen with the EU going forward, even without the UK.
The European Council stitch-up has rendered this place impotent until today, when you've got some real power if you choose to use it. What you've seen from Ursula von der Leyen today is an attempt for the European Union to take control of every single aspect of our lives. She wants to build a centralised, undemocratic, updated form of communism that will render nation-state parliaments, where the state controls everything, where nation-state parliaments will cease to have any relevance at all. I have to say, from our perspective, in some ways, I'm really rather pleased, because you've just made Brexit a lot more popular in the United Kingdom. Thank God we're leaving.
So that was like 4 or 5 months ago when they were going to elect a new president of the European Parliament. So people who elect that person are the MPs of each country.
Shocker.
So, and it's not democratic, which is funny because they love to talk about democracy. Not that I love democracy. It's kind of decentralized, and in some way,
it's kind of
mirrors what the Senate would kind of do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's quite interesting because the person he mentions, which is Ursula von der Leyen, which, as Shane said earlier, that sounds very German. Yes, she's a German politician.
Yeah, it does.
Brilliant, even though her ideas are
evil, like the fruits of the devil.
And there's this video. It's about 33 minutes long of her nominating speech, which she gave right before Nigel made these comments, and then everybody else got to make comments. All the MPs, or some of the MPs, made comments, but they could all make some, I think. And her speech, I was fascinated with, because as somebody who grew up in France, and it was right when they introduced the euro, so the European Union already existed. There were like these open markets, but the euro was like this next step kind of thing. I didn't realize just how much Europe was going to look like America one day. And it still doesn't look like America. I'm talking about there's so much top-down control.
Right.
But her plans for this top-down control,
gigantic,
and how similar it is to America in the fact that she sounds like a smart Elizabeth Warren. I'm not saying that Elizabeth Warren is dumb, but she is not as eloquent and as well read as this woman. And the fact that she's so smart and that she's surrounded by all these people who support her, and now there's even less pushback because the Nigel Farages and the British are not part of that system, scares the living crap out of me. So I'm going to play a few parts that are in English. She speaks English, French, and German. She might speak some other languages, but these are the three she uses. And she goes from one to the next effortlessly, changing the accent. When she speaks English, she sounds pretty English. When she speaks German, I mean, anybody speaking German sounds German to me. And when she speaks French, like she actually sounds kind of French. It's weird. And she goes back and forth between them. I'm sure you can find a version with some subtitles. If I find one, I will link that one instead. But here are just a few of the parts in English that scared the living bejesus out of me, if I can find them. Can you distract people for a second, Shane?
Yeah, it's a podcast, so I mean, we really don't have to. But these, we got all the time in the world.
I guess we do. You know, that's something that Rogan doesn't worry about at all. He's like,
no,
we're gonna go to the bathroom, and then it just stays
break,
like nobody
back.
talks for a minute.
Nobody cares. Yeah,
okay.
No, they're all good.
Here's a random moment. As soon as YouTube lets.
You see all of these?
And there's an ad.
Of course there is.
And skip ad now.
In tomorrow's opportunities, honorable members, our most pressing challenge is keeping our planet healthy. This is the greatest responsibility and opportunity of our times. I want Europe to become the first climate neutral continent in the world by 2050.
You're not going to solve the environment with taxes.
It gets worse.
To make this happen, we must take bold steps together. Our current goal of reducing our emissions by 40% by 2030 is not enough. We must go further. We must strive for more. A two-step approach is needed to reduce CO2 emissions by 2030 by 50, if not 55%. The European Union will lead international negotiations to increase the level of ambition of other major economies by 2021. Because to achieve real impact, we do not only have to be ambitious at home, we have to do that, yes, but the world has to move together. To make this happen, I will put forward a Green Deal for Europe in my first 100 days in office. I will put forward the first ever European climate law, which will set the 2050 target in law. This increase of ambition will need investment on a major scale. Public money will not be enough. I will propose a Sustainable Europe investment plan and turn parts of the European Investment Bank into a climate bank.
So,
all right, Al Gore.
So not only is she talking about
she's scary as
the
hell.
fact that public money is not enough, but then she's talking about, well, we're going to have the centralized bank and the fact that we can print our own currency. We're going to have a climate bank. I'm not even sure if that, I didn't know that was a thing
yet.
But then I heard it and I'm like, oh, I could see all the ways this goes
so
badly. So they're just going to print tons of money to be able to finance all these Green New Deal ideas, and that's going to have no consequence on the rest of the economy.
The thing is it's not even a new idea. Like Al Gore was trying to do this almost 10 years ago, right? When he was selling carbon offsets, like he was trying.
She talks about carbon offsets a second later.
Yeah, he was trying to establish basically a repository in a new way to trade, right? Where he owned the currency, which people were falling into. I mean, it's a devious and evil genius idea.
So this is just one of the things, but do you see all the resemblance with the American Civil Rights? She talks about her first 100 days in office, as if she's taking cues of, oh look, this works over there. You just get into power, you say all these things you want to do, and because populism, she's working under the premise of populism just as much, sadly, as Nigel is. But all these other ideas she talks about, some which are in French, some in German, so I don't know what she said when it was in German.
Yeah.
But I mean, she starts out talking about, well, I'm a woman and we need to make sure about like gender equality, and the fact that there's a woman who's the president of the EU is amazing.
You got 51% of the world population already. You're not a minority, so shut up.
She talks about minimum wage. She talks about childcare. She talks about it goes on and on. Every single idea that we've ever heard here in the United States by the progressive left about how to grow government.
Yeah.
She talks about them and doubles down because they're already used to a lot of things that we're not used to.
Yeah.
And she keeps on saying none of this is to subvert the nation states. Of course, the nation states have their systems. Our system is just going to be complementary.
Yeah. It's, all I hear is, I'm promising you this. I'm going to indebt you this much. And in other words, as soon as I indebt you, I'm coming to collect with guns. That's all I hear. That's as simple. I mean, I'm a Korean eater. I see it as simple as the sun comes up every day and the sun goes down, man. This is how it works. This is the cycle. Somebody promises something, it's quote unquote a law. Not that humans can make up law. It's stupid. And not keep natural law at the same time and expect disastrous consequences. You're going to eventually run out of people's money. Like who was it? Another UK. The Iron Lady. Who the hell was that? Margaret Thatcher.
Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, Margaret Thatcher. You're going to run out of other people's money. Why?
Did she say that?
Yeah, because people are going to be tired of paying you and not seeing what you've already promised. Oh, well, we're just going to need X amount more. Or we're just going to need X amount more. Or we're going to go find something else to tax. And we're going to point more guns at you.
Even if you but that's the problem is it doesn't even stop there. It's like, even if you, Shane, took my money and bought all the things I needed in life for you, like, here, Banks, here's some toothpaste, here's some food. I'd be like, don't stop it. Let me buy my own toothpaste and my own food.
I don't like Arm & Hammer. I want some Aquafresh or whatever the hell it is. Like, yeah.
I'd probably have a disdain for Aquafresh just because you bought it for me.
And you absolutely would too, man. It's a downright truth. I'm going to link
this whole thing in the show notes because I think it's fascinating, even though it goes a little long.
So your prediction is that Europe is going further down this whole faster? Do you think there's going to be some
faster,
people?
Yes.
Do you think that as this happens, you'll start to see spin-off like people from the Netherlands and like I feel like
do Brexit type stuff?
Yeah.
I feel like maybe, but I feel like Brexit and those things are going to push the EU faster into their things as well because it's going to create this competition and this motivation the same way that Trump motivates the Democrats, the same way that Obama motivated the Republicans and so on and so forth.
Definitely see things heating up a bit.
People are divided over there too. It's not like they love each other, and they're part of different countries to a larger degree in different cultures than we are here, which unfortunately the politicians can use. So I said, how
do we get these people guns? That want to resist. How do we get those people guns so that they can defend themselves against this crap?
I'll link this, and if I have the right time frame here, I'm just going to play one more like 20 seconds that is for all the
go for it.
All the Austrian economics nerds out there because I found it fascinating. Hopefully this is the right timestamp.
Make sure you play the ad first, too.
There's no ad.
And we like competition. But if they are making these profits by benefiting from our education system, our skilled workers,
you know what she's saying.
Our infrastructure, and our social security, if this is so, it is not acceptable that they make profits, but they are barely paying any taxes because they play our tax system. If they want to benefit, they have to share the burden.
The burden. That's what you
Honourable
are.
Members,
you're a burden.
The European way is also about using all of our potential, our people, our talent, our diversity. It is about creating a fairer and more equal union. This will drive me forward every...
Okay, so that was not the right timestamp. I was worried about that. But basically, before she goes into the end of her part about how big companies, basically the Amazons and the Googles of the world, don't pay their fair share because they profit from the roads and and the schools. It's a tired thing that Bernie could have said a second ago. She says at one point that it's the government basically that creates this, not people. It's not people who make the market. It's the economy that allows people to do things. And my only thought was like, that's literally the antithesis of human action. What I would revere as the most basic understanding of economics is that it's top down, it's bottom up. Individual people make decisions, and that forms the economy. And she's like, this economy that we give to people, like, they need to pay their fair share for it, because people, she specifically says, it's not people that make up the economy. It's the economy that make the people. It's the weirdest thing ever.
And listen up, lower class, middle class, upper middle class, not super wealthy people. Okay. If you haven't made, let's just say if you haven't made $100 million, okay, maybe even, let's just say 50, let's lower the bar. If you haven't made $50 million, I could probably even go lower than that. 10 million. If you haven't made $10 million in your life, let me tell you something, people. This is a charade. This whole damn thing is a charade. What she is saying is a charade. And here's why. She will sit here and chastise people who have made profits. She will chastise people with money. She will chastise the industrious. The problem is any time that she needs to do something in terms of campaigning, raising funds, creating awareness for whatever she wants to create awareness for, who does she go see? She doesn't come see you. She doesn't come see the poor. You got no money to give her. She doesn't come see the middle class or even the upper middle class, because why? You got other things you're worried about. You're worried about making rent. You're worried about putting shoes on your kids' feet. You're worried about all this kind of stuff. And this is not just, solitary a European thing. This is a international thing. I don't care wherever you find government. And what will happen when all things are considered, and those people who are giving her money figure out what are in laws, what are they going to do? They're going to write loopholes in those laws for themselves. And this will continue. And so what she is advocating and what she is provocating people to do is hate the rich and all this other. She doesn't even hate the rich.
She has created a monster that she cannot control with the intention, her outward intentions at the very least.
The designing men.
Her inward intentions, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
But her outward intentions cannot control the monster that she has already, that they've already created, and that she wants to make much worse.
There's absolutely not an ounce of stoicism in this lady. Zero. Like, she wants to control anything and everything that's possibly out there in her own image of what this world should look like, and that's obviously extremely dangerous. My whole point in all of this is when we look at some very prophetic men and women, for that matter, that had it figured out hundreds of years ago. Designing men and women in aristocratic combinations will always get together and always try to tell you what they're going to do for you. They'll take your money by gunpoint, and they will enslave and indebt you until that system falls apart. They'll have you kill each other at the end of it, and then they'll stand up another one. Every damn time. This is no different.
I'll take one good thing from this is it shows people, hopefully, because people need to be shown like practical, real world things sometimes to believe things, that tyrancy, again, not a word, authoritarianism, is gender neutral. Women, men, they don't care.
No, and the fact that men are being oppressed by 51% of females. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
No, that's an important thing. I was listening to Jordan Peterson the other day, and somebody was making the argument, the patriarchy and so forth, and he was like,
it's great argument.
Through the all of world history, the people who have oppressed other people have been a small minority of people, a infinitely small minority of people who were the elite and the oppressors and the tyrants. And at some points, those were mostly men. Yeah. But does it matter when there's such a small fraction?
Yeah.
I don't know. The people who were oppressed,
they don't care.
Basically, for 49.9% men, 49.9% women. Basically, that is the math. Rounding errors.
Sure.
So, screw her.
Yeah. Anyways.
She is quite impressive, though, and that should scare you guys.
100. 1 hour and about 39 minutes. Not bad. We did well.
Indeed. We had a whole other segment planned, but
we get talking, man. I think this was one that needed to be done. I think it needed to be done at length. And this is historic, man. I think this is, I think not only is it historic in this context, I think it is historic to where we can point and predict and show what could and might happen, and and point out the fallacies that are out there, and those who want to control. But
You get final thoughts on Brexit? Like your final line?
I'm happy for them. I'm happy for the people that are finally moving on. Like it's
cool.
This division is at least going to stop. I think. Now I say not totally, but I think it's going to stop, and I think hopefully the UK comes back around, and I hope they're a great people again. I mean, most people are great. I hope they get. I hope they get it together. I hope the suffering is not that long or great or anything else, and I don't think it will be.
That's cool. My final conclusion is, after all this information that we've talked about, remember, you will be hearing about Brexit and the consequences at least till the end of the year, and I predict that there will be a delay of the transition.
Yeah. Real quick for our listeners out there, just new, very quick subject. I think I'm going to do some of these at the end of some shows. I haven't consulted with Banks on them. Just a quick campaign update for you guys.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
Because I think, we got a platform, we might as well talk about it. And you guys are going to hear me for an hour and a half, 2 times a week anyway, most of the time.
For those who don't know, and those who are new listeners, Shane is running for U.S. Senate here in the state of Georgia in a primary against David Perdue and whoever.
Oh, no primary. The general. We are.
Oh, it's the general. Of course it is.
We're in the general.
In the general against David Perdue and whoever the Democrat nominee is.
That's right. And so paperwork is in to the FEC right now, and I'm building my website. If you guys are, I'm doing it through, have you seen the Spark, from Adobe, Spark website builder? Super fun, super easy.
Cool.
I have not tried to transition anything yet, but I'm still working on it. I'll probably have a little bit of your advice come in here shortly. But
is it like you make it on one thing and then you publish it all at once?
I think so. I think you grab the HTML and you throw it into whatever server or whatever it is that you're being hosted by, and it just automatically does it for you. And it's for what I'm doing, I think it's the right way to go for now.
Does it have a main thing and a mobile thing?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, it's real simple. But at any rate, that's where it's going. It's
what's the color scheme?
Man, it's more. You guys
give us something, man. Give us something.
So what I'm going for is not like I'm not a politician, man. It's one of those things where I think the way you live your life is what speaks most about you. And there are obviously for you guys, I am incorporating the flame with the leaf. Some of you guys have asked, what is that about? The flame is for liberty. And it's got some other meaning in it. It's got some meaning in terms of, what was that? That's Banksy over there.
It's a reminder for me to pay my bills. It's the first of the month.
Pay your bills. But the flame is to burn down the lies, the bureaucracy, the overgrownness of despotism here in the United States. And the leaf is to grow new. A new generation.
I like that. A
new fondness of principle and liberty above politicians and parties and bringing people together. It has to be continual, and that's what I think it is that hope that there is new life, that there will be a tomorrow, that we will come together as a people, and through truth we will burn down the evil, the despotism, and the tyrants that are out there, and do it in a peaceful manner.
Where do you buy this truth gasoline?
Boy, lots of study, lots of good works and principle. I don't. You can't buy it. It's free. We're going to give it away. We've been giving it away for 160 episodes now, for God's sakes. But it is coming. We'll have a place up for donations and all that kind of stuff. And
that was actually what I was trying to allude to.
It's coming. Probably go through Anecdote again for donations. There'll be a link on the page and all that fun stuff. But it's more or less a reflection on principle in life, in my family, and I think the hashtag is probably going to be like Hazel 2020, because I thought about doing Shane 2020, but man, I'm bringing my whole family with me. That's including you.
I think Hazel's more. Thanks, man. I think Hazel. I prefer Hazel.
Yeah.
It's more original, but it's a very easy thing to remember too.
Yeah. It's short, sweet.
Yeah.
And here's the thing is, man, I want your ideas. I want this crowd, the rebels out there who have been our listeners. I hate to say faithful, but you guys have been with us for so long. I want you guys to be part of this. You got ideas, you got creative natures. I don't care what your flow is. I need your help. And whether it's on Twitter at Shane T. Hazel or Facebook at Shane Hazel, reach me wherever. Drop me lines. Throw stuff at us and say, hey, man, I think this would be great for your campaign. Do it. I'd love to have the input.
Very cool.
Open source, crowdsource, whatever it is, that's what we're all about.
And we're also about
Patreon.com.
where you can donate to the rebellion.
Yeah.
Because the rebellion is also an outlet for liberty, which includes Shane's campaign.
That's exactly right.
Is that legal FEC wise? I don't know.
We're not charging anything for it.
Yeah.
It's all voluntary.
But if you would like to make our jobs easier so that we can continue to grow and send you awesome stickers. I have all these pictures that people have sent me of their stickers on their cars and so forth. A few people don't know how to put stickers on horizontally and level. You guys are killing me. Shane does the same thing, but I still appreciate it very much, and we would love to send them to more people. It's patreon.com/rebellionpod. And if you have any sticker ideas, like you want a specific sticker and it has anything to do with liberty, and you're one of the first people to send it in, the request, we will make it.
Chances are,
it's less work for me.
That's right.
I just send it off to Gina, who is awesome, and thank you, Gina, for everything you do.
Yeah, so go to patreon.com/rebellionpod and help us out there. We've already talked about reviews in the beginning of the show, so we're not going to do that again. But social media, go out there, like, subscribe, watch, tell all your friends and family. Look at these guys. Look at what they're doing. It's amazing. They make liberty in government sound like, I don't know, like an idiot can do it. Oh, that's because no one should be doing it. At any rate, Banks, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation today, man, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you once in a while for doing this with me. And the crowd, as always, we love you guys, man. You guys are just so amazing for us. The spreading, the sharing, the help. I mean, I had somebody tell me the other day that they found one of our guests that came up to him and they said something to the effect of, "Oh, you were on the Rebellion." And, to come from, I don't know, 4 or 5 listeners or whatever we were back in the day to now, it's pretty cool.
So yeah, this has been your place for peace, liberty, and free markets. A little decentralization doesn't hurt either. We love you. We need you.
Peace.
Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff.